MMA fights have mostly always ended with unexpected outcomes. From seeing the underdog come out on top in a brutal fight, the fight's ending in just a few minutes of it starting. In MMA, upsets are more likely to occur than any other sport. So depending on the fighter you were rooting for in these fights, the unexpected turn would definitely either have your jaw dropped in surprise or you just straight up squealing in excitement. Sit tight as we take you to the top 10 most shocking upsets in UFC history. Number 10. Joanna Yenderetreck versus Namajunas. At number 10, we have these two incredible fighters, Yenderetreck and 25-year-old Namajunas. After Namajunas won their first fight in 2017, where Namajunas set the seemingly unbeatable star to the mat twice and made her tap out from the onslaught of her second trip to the canvas. After Namajunas landed a fifth consecutive left hand to the turtled-up Yenderetreck's dome, she noticed her down opponent's finger tap to the floor. At that moment, she stopped unloading and looked to the ref who put the defeated fighter out of her misery. A rematch was scheduled to take place in April 2018, a match Namajunas proved the previous match wasn't just a fluke. Thug Rose, as Namajunas is properly called, won the first 2 rounds. Yenderetreck turned up the heat in the middle of the fight, and the champ dug down deep to finish the job. Number 9. Henny Barao versus TJ Dillashaw. 1. TJ Dillashaw shocked the world in 2014 with a completely dominant win over top P4P fighter Henny Barao to claim the UFC bantamweight title. The huge underdog nearly finished the fight at 1 minute 3 seconds of the first round with a huge overhand right that sent Barao flying across the canvas. TJ continued to pound Barao and attempted to submit him. Barao barely made it out of the round. TJ was in complete control through the rest of the fight. Round 5 starts the same as the last round. When Barao misses a spinning kick, Dillashaw comes forward, attacking him with punches and kicks both high and low. Dillashaw finishes Barao at 2 minutes 35 seconds in the 5th round with a barrage of combinations. TJ Dillashaw wins by TKO, giving us a new champion. TJ became the first Team Alpha male fighter to claim a title in the UFC. And over a year after recording arguably the largest upset in UFC title fight history, Dillashaw proved his first win over Barao was no fluke as he dominated their rematch. A rematch where Dillashaw scored a dominant 4th round TKO victory over Barao. Dillashaw's striking superiority came into play as he caught an exhausted Barao with a vicious left hand that sent him flailing into the cage, followed up with one of the nastiest combinations that we've ever seen. Barao was never the same after those 2 losses to Dillashaw. Number 8. BJ Penn versus Matt Hughes. Since his debut into the UFC scene in 2001 with 3 back-to-back first-round knockouts, Penn has been known as the prodigy by the fans. After defeating several veterans, he got his chance to make history by taking on the dominant and significantly bigger welterweight champion Matt Hughes in the main event of UFC 46. Before the fight, Hughes, who was on an incredible winning streak, was considered to have the edge in size, strength, and wrestling ability. Penn, on the other hand, was one of the best Brazilian jiu-jitsu practitioners in the game, and had high level of boxing to go along with a granite jaw. When the bell sounded, fans in attendance and at home were shocked by the clear dominance demonstrated by the natural lightweight, Penn. On his feet, he picked Hughes apart with jabs and straight crosses and pounded him out, and when they finally went to the ground, Penn had the wrestler on the defensive from the moment they hit the mat. Penn was, in short, putting on a clinic against one of the best pound-for-pound fighters of his time. The interesting twist came with a huge overhand right from Penn driven directly down into Hughes' guard. Hughes continued to fight gamely, but his eyes were glazed by the shot as he scrambled for an answer. Utilizing his extremely flexible hips, Penn maneuvered onto the champion's back in search of the rear naked choke. When the tap came at the 4:39 mark of the opening round, Hughes and the audience were stunned. In their 3rd fight at UFC 123, BJ Penn put an end to the trilogy. Penn set Hughes to the mat with a huge counter right hand over the top. Hughes drops and BJ just tees off on him, and that's a wrap. Big Dan jumped in to save Matt Hughes. TKO at 4:40 of the very first round. Number 7. Luke Rockhold versus Michael Bisping. In this UFC 199 fight, Bisping comes out swinging early. He delivered an early right hand, but Rockhold responded with those powerful leg kicks, body kicks, and a few good punches. Bisping responded with kicks of his own and tried multiple times to land his overhand on Rockhold's chin. Towards the end of the first round, Bisping stuns Luke with a jab that had him off balance, and Rockhold responded with a right jab of his own. Bisping shifted, and Rockhold tried exiting on a weird angle with his chin exposed, and Bisping caught him flush with an overhand left hook that he notoriously called left hook Larry. Rockhold goes down, but pops back up to his feet where Bisping isn't giving him any space or breaks. He hits Rockhold again with an overhand left in the scramble and sends Rockhold into the mat again. Rockhold rolls to his back up against the cage and is met with a barrage of strikes before Big John pulls a headlock to get Bisping off of him, with 1 minute 25 seconds left in the first round to make Bisping the first UK fighter to win gold. Apart from my children and my wife, this is the greatest moment of my life, Bisping said to Joe Rogan after the fight, per Fox Sports UFC. There's nothing I do better in life than fighting. Anderson Silva versus Chris Weidman. UFC 162 brought one of the greatest surprises in recent UFC history, as the relatively inexperienced Weidman knocked out arguably the greatest of all time Silva. Weidman had just 9 fights to his name going into the middleweight title bout and had been absent from the sport for a year, which was a quarter of his total career at the time due to injury. Although a lot of speculators and journalists claimed that his KO was a case of Silva losing the fight for himself rather than Weidman taking the title from him. But that wasn't really the case, as Weidman won the first round by landing a quick takedown and controlling Silva for the better part of the round. Landed some good punches from the top and attacked with a knee bar and a heel hook, but Anderson escaped and got back to his feet where he just kept toying with Weidman, waving him on and standing with his hands on his waist. Anderson ends the first round by putting Weidman on the back foot. In the second round, it was more Silva going about his usual antics and waiting for Weidman to overextend himself. The challenger did a wonderful job of continually moving into good striking range rather than lunging in at Silva's bait. His jabs landed successfully through Silva's razzle-dazzle. Anderson pretends to stumble after Weidman hits him with a left hook. Weidman follows up with an overhand right, another right, but it was only the left hook at the climax of Weidman's final flurry that mattered most. Silva's relentless taunting cost him the middleweight championship along with his pristine UFC record. And just as expected, there was a rematch where Silva shattered his leg. Number 5, Ronda Rousey versus Holm. When Rousey lost to Holm at UFC 193 in 2015, it was probably the most shocking turn of events in UFC history. The pound-for-pound top name in women's MMA lost by a vicious second-round knockout. By the end of the first minute, it was clear that the UFC 193 main event wasn't going to be a standard Rousey fight. Traditionally, Rousey's matches follow a simple, logical progression. Rousey moves forward, Rousey clinches opponent, Rousey throws opponent, Rousey armbars opponent, Rousey wins. But that wasn't the case with Holm. It came as no surprise that Rousey charged forward in the early goings, pressing the action and throwing looping punches to tie up Holm. What did come as a surprise was Holm's ability to consistently tag Rousey and get out of dodge before she could answer. Ronda was looking for a takedown and almost landed midway through the first, but Holm was able to scramble back to her feet and Ronda kept pressing the action. Near the end of the first, Holly landed a takedown of her own. In the second round, Holm came out ready to finish the job. A desperate Rousey kept pressing the gas and walking Holly down couldn't get a hold of her. About a minute into the second round, Ronda tried to clinch and Holly evades, leaving her off balance and she hits the mat. As Ronda gets up, Holly positioned herself behind her and greeted Ronda with a head kick that sent her awkwardly to the mat. Herb Dean steps in with 4 minutes 3 seconds left in the second round, ending Ronda's reign as champion. To make the knockout even more shocking, it was Holm's first finish in the UFC, making it one of the greatest upsets in MMA history. Number 4, Fedor Emelianenko versus Fabricio Werdum. Fedor has been the Pride Heavyweight Champion and the 2004 Pride Heavyweight Grand Prix Champion before Pride folded. Going into this fight, no one thought Werdum had a chance. To start the fight, Fedor knocked Werdum down with a combination of hard punches, a right uppercut followed by a left hook and a right punch that grazed the back of the head, followed up with another left and right hook. Fedor followed Werdum to the ground, and this is when the tide started to change. Fedor hit Werdum with some ground and pound, but Werdum kept throwing up submissions off of his back. In the scramble, Werdum put Fedor in a triangle armbar, and Fedor tapped out 69 seconds into the fight. It was considered one of the biggest upsets in MMA history. Number 3, Amanda Nunes versus Juliana Pena. 1. The duo first fought each other at UFC 269 in December 2021, with Pena shocking the world and submitting Nunes in a second round with a rear naked choke. In doing so, she snapped Nunes' 12-fight, 6-year unbeaten streak to win the 135-pound belt. Nunes looked fired up in her corner before coming out, perhaps more than eager to silence Pena's trash talk leading up to the fight.
Is at UFC 200, you said you would fight me in the press conference, and you still have not.
You lost.
This is something. This has been something that's been brewing since you.
Pena tried to open up with an overhand right, but Nunes chopped her lead leg out from underneath her, and she went down. When Pena returned to her feet, she unleashed some combinations upstairs, but once again found herself on her butt from a hard straight down the middle. Nunes jumped on her, looking to unload some ground and pound, but Pena reversed, and the two got back to their feet before Pena sat down along the fence. Pena angled for a Kimura from the bottom, but Nunes was able to work her way to Pena's back and started attacking the neck, with Pena fighting the hands to keep her away from her throat. Nunes was seen smiling between rounds, apparently having some fun out there. Pena came out throwing some nice combinations, stunning the champion in the center of the cage. Nunes quickly recovered, returning fire with heavy hands. Pena landed a nice left, then another, as Nunes continued to wobble and return heavy fire. Nunes' left jab was destroying Pena's face. Pena made a dogfight, and the double champ got tired. Pena repeatedly popped Nunes with left hands and using her forward pressure to push her into the fence. She slung Nunes down to the mat, then jumped on her back and tapped her. She just stood there and traded punches until Nunes was completely spent. She didn't even have any hooks in or anything. Nunes was just turtled up, beaten up, and seriously fatigued. The fight, which earned Performance of the Night, was undoubtedly a major surprise to Nunes, as she never expected her to be dethroned in that fashion. She later avenged that loss with a 5-round decision over Juliana Pena, where she outclassed her on the feet and the ground and scored multiple knockdowns. Pena put Nunes in danger a few times while on her back, but aside from that, it was pure domination by Nunes, who reclaimed her title and champ status. Number 2, George St. Pierre versus Matt Serra. Serra is basically the definition of an underdog. Considering the fact he defeated Chris Liddell by split decision to win the season and get a crack at UFC welterweight champion George St. Pierre. During the fight, St. Pierre's attacks were quick as he launched kick after kick, aiming at Serra's head, looking for his second knockout in a row after finishing Hughes with the same kind of strike. Serra wasn't going to be intimidated, however, and kept going back with body shot anytime he could get inside on the Canadian. And with just only 2 minutes left to go in the first round, one punch changed everything. Serra connected with a looping right hand that clipped St. Pierre just behind the ear, and as he wobbled backwards, struggling to catch his balance, it was clear that the shot landed better than expected. Serra swarmed with punches, and at one point, St. Pierre fell flat onto his hands and knees. Even as St. Pierre tried to get back up, Serra continued to rain strikes on him and wobbled him again. George tried to grab a leg, but Serra slipped out easily and kept pouring it on. St. Pierre got back to his feet again, and Serra put him down again. This time, he fell on his back. Serra didn't let up until St. Pierre rolled to his side. McCarthy finally stopped the offensive onslaught, and Serra jumped up in celebration and did a one-handed cartwheel. That was and still is one of the biggest shockers in MMA history. Number 1. Kamaru Usman versus Leon Edwards. Edwards pulled off one of the biggest upsets of the year and in UFC history when defeated Usman by knockout late in the 5th round with seemingly a Hail Mary to become the new UFC welterweight champion. In a crazy turn of events, Rocky took down Usman and became the first person in UFC history to record a takedown against the Nigerian Nightmare. For round 4, Usman came out much calmer. He brought out all of his experience, threw good punches to the head and body. On several occasions, even though he couldn't submit him, he took the challenger to the ground and made life miserable for Leon, but he kept getting back up to his feet. Round 4 ends with Usman bullying Leon against the fence, throwing elbows and punches. The 5th round was looking the same. Everyone thought Rocky was giving up on himself, including the commentators. Usman kept dominating until late in the 5th round with less than 1 minute left to go. Edwards feigned going in with a right hand and threw out his straight just to hide the head kick. Usman put his hands up, tilted his head to the opposite side, and the kick that disconnected him from consciousness and shook the world. No one in the arena could believe it. Usman's long streak of 7 defenses and tying Anderson Silva's record for most wins was over, and Leon Rocky Edwards was the new UFC welterweight champion. One of the highlights of the match was when Edwards' coach switched from whispering in his ears to straight up yelling at him. Lovo yelled, "Stop feeling sorry for your effing self. What's wrong with you?" To which Edwards replied, "I'm not." "Well, come on then," Lovo fired back. Then Leon went on to shock the world. If you look closely before the first round, Leon signaled that he was going to win with a headshot. The seeming Hail Mary was actually a planned attack from Rocky, and it took him nearly the whole 24 minutes to execute it perfectly. That's a wrap on the top 10 most shocking upsets in UFC history. Let us know which upset was your favorite in the comments section below. If you feel as though one should have made the list, then mention that as well. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bells so you never miss amazing content from this channel. Click the video on the screen to see more MMA content from us.